More thing, Jesse.
All right, special edition of Mom Tag.
Yeah. Good.
All right, this one's a doozy. Jesse, any political arena is fraught with name-calling, as well as wretched accusations by all sorts of players, but not by the President of the United States. To normalize his behavior, calling a woman horseface, demeans you and makes you appear crass and quite awful and also misogynistic, as well as off the mark. Catch yourself before you fall over the edge of what's right, Jesse.
Whoa! That's meaningful.
Here's another one. How do we all seek a more civil discourse if you continue to fan the flames? Yikes.
Oh, firebug there.
Yeah, and you need to be better informed regarding issues of sensible gun control measures. Stop making sweeping and generalized and inaccurate statements about what Democrats are seeking. Note those who won the election on this issue, just as reported by Dana.
Thank you, Mom.
And lastly, the caravan is real, Jesse. The point others were making was that Trump only stoked caravan fear for election purposes. He hasn't mentioned it since. All right, Mom. Hey, Mom, I'm on Hannity.
I wonder why.
I dare you to watch that.
Material for you.
Yeah, there it is.
Dana?
Okay, so one of the best people at Fox News behind the scenes is a producer named Eldad Yarom. And we all love Eldad, but we have to celebrate his son today because Ariel Yarom, prestigious youth cross-country competition in the world. He only started running when he was 8 years old. I've been watching his progress on Instagram. I talked to Eldad about it. Obviously, Eldad's very proud, but so is everybody at Fox News. Go, Ariel.
All right, Ariel.
That was great.
It's not that great. I mean,
I thought it was
running.
Faster than you, Greg.
Well, I'm not trying to win anything, Jesse.
Clearly.
Do I have a thing I throw to here? Greg's Fine Wine News. Hey, if you want me to do one more thing, just send me a bottle of wine and name it after me. This is from Chez Rene. Chez Rene Vineyard in New York City.
Oh.
It's a blend of different grapes, a French and American hybrid, kind of a Pinot Noir. I always have a problem saying that. Thank you, guys. They're in, I think, Slate Hill, New York. All right, Juan.
All right, so on Thanksgiving, it's a tradition for many families to throw around the football. You know that. Well, it looked like a souped-up pickup game on TV last night, but it was an NFL game. Everyone was running deep, throwing deep, interceptions, fumbles.
Wow, amazing.
It was so entertaining. In fact, it was a historic 105 points, the third highest scoring game in history. First time two teams scored over 50, and, of course, one team scored over 50 and lost. But for fans, it was football heaven.
Kennedy.
Great game. So euphemisms are dead. Arthur Posey has proven this in New Orleans. He went into a restaurant and said, y'all about to close right now because I'm going to get a bomb and blow this place up. He was not talking about explosives. He was talking about relieving himself in the bathroom. So parents, a word to the wise. Moms, don't say you're going to drop the kids off at the pool because someone will call CPS. And if you say you're taking the Browns to the Super Bowl, you will be arrested for...
No one's taking the Browns to the Super Bowl.
Set your DVRs and never miss an episode of The Five. Special reports up next. Hello, Brett.
Hi, Brett.
Potty stories are the best. Thank you. Thanks, Greg. This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer. We are following three breaking stories tonight. President Trump has decided to put business first and not punish Saudi Arabia over the murder of a journalist. The president has also submitted written answers to special counsel Robert Mueller's questions concerning his investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. And the market meltdown continues with another day of major losses on Wall Street. First, though, President Trump says no further repercussions are coming for the Saudis for the killing of that reporter, Jamal Khashoggi, at the kingdom's embassy in Turkey, the consulate there. He says the reason is America first. The decision comes despite a report the CIA has determined the Saudi crown prince ordered the killing. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts leads us off tonight from the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. President Trump is catching flack from members of his own party about his decision to not punish Saudi Arabia's leadership over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, a close friend of the president, saying he believes the president's decision is Saudi Arabia first, not America first. Departing the White House for Mar-a-Lago, President Trump today weighed in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, siding with Saudi Arabia, refusing to say whether Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the Khashoggi killing.
Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. We are with Saudi Arabia. We're staying with Saudi Arabia.
In a statement this afternoon, President Trump said King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman vigorously deny any knowledge of the planning or execution of the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. We may never know all of the facts surrounding the murder. What is known, the president said, is that Saudi Arabia plays a crucial role in America's national and economic security, citing the threat from Iran and some $450 billion in arms and commercial sales to Saudi Arabia inked last year.
It's a mean, nasty world out there. The Middle East in particular. There are important American interests to keep the American people safe.
In his statement, the president denounced the crime against Khashoggi as a terrible one and pointed out the U.S. has already taken strong action against 17 Saudis known to have participated in the murder. But pointing a finger of blame at the Crown Prince was a risk President Trump did not want to take.
It's all about America first. We're not going to give up hundreds of billions of dollars in orders and let Russia, China, and everybody else have them.
The president also addressed the disclosure that his daughter Ivanka had used a private email address to do White House business when she first joined the administration.
This was just early on when she came in. These calls were not classified, unlike Hillary Clinton's calls, which were classified.
In 2016, President Trump made Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server a central part of his campaign. But in a statement today, a spokesman for Ivanka Trump's attorney, Abby Lowell, said she did not create a private server in her house or office. There was never classified information transmitted. The account was never transferred or housed at Trump Organization. No emails were ever deleted, and the emails have been retained in the official account in conformity with records preservation laws and rules. President Trump called it a non-story.
Ivanka can handle herself. These are all in the historical records, and it's all fake news.
The beginning of the president's Thanksgiving break was marred by a steep decline in the stock market. President Trump waving off the pullback today, insisting the fundamentals of the economy are strong.
Our unemployment is at a record low. You look at all of the different statistics. I think your tech stocks have some problems, but that'll come back.
The decline began after Vice President Mike Pence and Chinese President Xi Jinping got into a war of words at the APEC conference in Papua New Guinea over the weekend. Chief Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow insisting that standing up to China is the right thing to do.
It'll come to a head at the G20. Vice President Pence, as he always does, defended American interests.
On the Khashoggi killing, President Trump is also hearing from another friend, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who in a statement said to look the other way in this case is the wrong thing to do. Graham adding, quote, I firmly believe there will be strong bipartisan support for serious sanctions against Saudi Arabia, including appropriate members of the royal family for this barbaric act which defied all civilized norms. Brett?
John, the New York Times is reporting President Trump wanted to prosecute two of his political critics, former FBI Director James Comey and Hillary Clinton. What are you hearing there?
Well, certainly in public, President Trump mentioned on many different occasions that he thought that the FBI and the DOJ should at least be investigating James Comey, the former FBI director, and his opponent in 2016, Hillary Clinton. But this story takes it a step further to suggest that President Trump actually mentioned to his then White House counsel, Don McGahn, that he wanted the Department of Justice to go after Comey and Clinton. According to the New York Times, McGahn took it seriously enough that he had his attorneys in the White House counsel's office draft a memo for the president outlining for him all of the horrible things that would happen to his presidency if he were to order such an investigation. Right?
We'll follow it. John Roberts live on the North Lawn. John, thanks. President Trump has answered the questions special counsel Robert Mueller submitted in his probe into Russian interference in the 2016 election. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here to tell us where things stand tonight. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you, Brett, and good evening. Within the last hour, the president's legal team issued a brief statement confirming the president's written responses are now with special counsel Robert Mueller. Significantly, the questions dealt with Russia-related topics, not the firing of FBI Director James Comey as part of any obstruction investigation. It has been our position from the outset that much of what has been asked raised serious constitutional issues and was beyond the scope of a legitimate inquiry, Rudy Giuliani said. This remains our position today. The president has nonetheless provided unprecedented cooperation. President's team also emphasized they provided more than 30 witnesses, 1.4 million pages of material, and now the president's written responses, Brett.
Catherine, Democrats unleashed another assault on his choice to lead the Justice Department. Tell us about that.
Well, today, Democrats launched a third front in their assault on the legitimacy of Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer released a letter calling on the Justice Department's internal watchdog to investigate potentially unlawful or improper contact prior to the appointment between Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, President Trump, as well as White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. Citing media reports, Schumer writes, Mr. Whitaker was seen by department officials as a partisan and a White House spy. He was also known as the West Wing's eyes and ears. In addition to the lawsuit filed by 3 Senate Democrats this week, House Democrat Jerry Nadler, who is positioned to take over the Judiciary Committee, has threatened to immediately force Whitaker to testify on Capitol Hill in January. Earlier today on the White House lawn, the president stood by his choice.
He's doing a very good job. Everybody tells me that Matt Whitaker's doing a fantastic job. So, we'll have to see where everything goes. But everybody tells me he's doing a fantastic job.
Whitaker, has a major speaking event in New York City tomorrow on national security issues. Brett.
Catherine Herridge, thank you.
You're welcome.
More problems for big tech and major retailers led to another wild ride on Wall Street today. The Dow lost 552 today. The S&P 500 fell 49. The Nasdaq dropped 120. So what is happening? Let's get some perspective. Susan Lee of the Fox Business Network joins us again from New York. Good evening, Susan.
Hi, Brett. 2018 is looking to be a down year for investors. Both the S&P and the Dow have now wiped out their gains on the year, while the Nasdaq is barely in the green. Today, we saw a dramatic drop for oil prices, with the biggest single-day loss in 3 years, weighed by trade concerns and by President Trump's statements on Saudi Arabia, which is one of the world's largest oil producers. Energy stocks plunging, every single oil stock on the S&P 500 falling today, but that also means it's cheaper at the pump for consumers. The national average, $2.61, almost a quarter cheaper than it was a month ago, which means more money in consumers' wallets as we head into Black Friday, which is supposed to be one of the biggest shopping days of the year. And Americans are expected to spend more this year than they did last year. But that didn't help out the retailers today, despite better results from Kohl's and Target. Also weighing on the markets, big technology names, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Alphabet, parent to Google, all in bear markets, 20% down from recent peaks. The concern for investors continue to be higher interest rates, a global economic slowdown, and lower expectations for future company sales and profit. Traditionally, the week of Thanksgiving is usually a positive week for stock markets, with the S&P 500 rising for the past 6 straight years, while the Dow has gained 19 out of the past 24 years. This year, however, it's looking difficult for investors to see positive returns on the week. Brett, back to you.
Susan Lee in New York. Susan, thank you. Another Fox News alert. Ohio Democratic Congresswoman Marcia Fudge says she will not challenge Nancy Pelosi for the Speaker of the House job next year. Fudge says Pelosi has assured her that black women will have a seat at the decision-making table in the House of Representatives. Fudge had been the only announced possible challenger for Pelosi, although 16 Democrats have signed a letter opposing Pelosi's candidacy. Pelosi still faces a substantial challenge, but Congresswoman Fudge's announcement is a major hurdle for Pelosi to clear. A federal judge is preventing President Trump from enforcing his latest ban on asylum seekers. That is good news to many of the Central American migrants trying to enter the U.S. along the border with California. National correspondent William Lajeunesse is in Tijuana tonight, where thousands of people displaced by the Northern California wildfires will be spending Thanksgiving. Keeping here. The death toll in the Northern California fires has climbed to 79. The number of people missing, though, has dropped to 700. It was more than 1,000. Heavy rain is calming the flames, but bringing additional problems. Correspondent Claudia Cowan is again in Chico, California tonight.
This isn't home, and, we're we're looking for a home.
For Lisa Martin and thousands of residents of Paradise, California, there is no home to go to this Thanksgiving. Instead, some will be spending it here at this church evacuation center in Chico.
You're reflecting on everything you're grateful for. It's not frivolous. It's actually meaningful. I'm very grateful to still be here. I'm grateful to be able to be here instead of being on the streets in the cold overnight.
Hundreds are still living outside in a nearby Walmart parking lot, even though city officials hope to get everyone out before the weather makes a bad situation even worse.
The rain will cause unfortunate, dire circumstances for these individuals who are already dealing with the most tragic disaster they ever could.
With heavy rain, flash flood watches, and cold temperatures in the forecast for tomorrow, the race is on to get evacuees into more permanent shelters, as well as get through as much of the search and recovery process as possible. Authorities worry the rain could wash away bone fragments and turn loose, dry ash into paste, making it tough to identify victims.
We've got it all gridded out. We're just working methodically. Unfortunately, there's just so much extensive damage. It's going to take time. I know it's hard on the families who are trying to get answers.
All right, this is not going to be pretty.
The LA Fire Department released new video of tense moments as one of its helicopter crews rescued people from a mountain peak last week. Right. With low fuel and the Woolsey fire raging, the pilots managed to land and get 3 people and their dogs to safety.
That's enough excitement for me today.
The first winter storm of the season is expected to roll in tonight and last through the week. The rain will help clear out this unhealthy air and put out what's left of the fire, but officials worry that a heavy downpour could trigger mudslides. Brett?
Claudia Cowan live in Chico tonight. Claudia, thank you. Meantime, overseas, a suicide bomber targeted a gathering of hundreds of Islamic scholars in Afghanistan today. At least 50 people were killed there. Another 83 were wounded, with 20 in critical condition. It happened at a wedding hall during a celebration marking the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. No one immediately claimed responsibility for that attack, but both the Taliban and a local ISIS affiliate have targeted religious scholars aligned with the government in the past. There is word tonight President Trump may be considering a trip to visit U.S. troops in Iraq or Afghanistan, or both. It comes at a time when the president is taking major heat for what his critics say is bringing politics into the military. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin tonight reports from the Pentagon.
President Bush used to serve turkey to troops in Iraq. President Obama also surprised the troops during the holidays. However, after nearly 2 years in the White House, President Trump has yet to make a surprise visit to troops deployed overseas. But the administration is now discussing a future trip following criticism over the president skipping a trip to a U.S. cemetery while in France to commemorate the end of World War I and missing Veterans Day events at Arlington National Cemetery.
You know, in retrospect, I should have, and I did last year, and I will virtually every year.
I don't think the military or our vets are offended by the president not being there. And the reason is because he's clearly stands out as a president who is so supportive of the military.
Other top retired military commanders and defense officials are demanding an apology from President Trump for maligning the decorated Navy SEAL admiral who oversaw the bin Laden raid.
Bill McRaven, retired admiral, Navy SEAL, 37 years, former head of U.S. Special Operations.
Hillary Clinton fan.
He was a Navy SEAL.
Wouldn't it have been nice if we got Osama bin Laden a lot sooner than that?
Leon Panetta was CIA director during the bin Laden raid and later served as Secretary of Defense.
This president owes Admiral McRaven and all of the SEALs involved in that operation an apology for what he's saying.
The Navy SEAL who killed bin Laden said the president needs to acknowledge he misspoke.
I was just surprised, and again, I think he was just talking a little faster than he was thinking. I don't think he really thinks having a different president in power or a different admiral or general in charge, we would have found him sooner. There were so many people, so many agencies involved with finding bin Laden that it was done as quickly and as efficiently as we could.
While leaving the White House for Mar-a-Lago, the president punted when asked whether Admiral McRaven is a hero. He said, "I don't know Admiral McRaven," then added he plans to go to a war zone, but did not say when. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thanks. Up next, the U.S. considers adding another country to its list of state sponsors of terrorism. First, beyond our borders tonight. Authorities in Spain say one person died and dozens were injured today after a landslide derailed a commuter train traveling toward Barcelona. Firefighters and emergency workers evacuated 131 commuters and sent 5 of the 41 people injured to the hospital. Heavy rain is being blamed for that landslide. China the go-ahead for a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier and its battle group to make a port call in Hong Kong. The approval for the USS Ronald Reagan and 3 other warships comes 2 months after China denied a similar request. City officials in Rome have sent in 600 police officers to evict a purported crime family from 8 villas allegedly built without authorization decades ago. The Casamanica clan made headlines in 2015 when it staged an elaborate Hollywood-style funeral for its boss, complete with a horse-drawn carriage, flower petals tossed from a helicopter, and the theme music from The Godfather playing outside the church. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. The president is said to be considering putting Venezuela on the list of nations designated as state sponsors of terrorism. Correspondent Kevin Cork reports tonight from West Palm Beach, where the president just touched down, on why Venezuela and why now.
It would be the strongest signal yet that the Trump administration is willing to target the oil-rich but faltering South American country. The Washington Post, citing unnamed sources, says the Trump administration is prepared to add Venezuela to its list of state sponsors of terrorism, a designation reserved for governments accused of repeatedly providing support for acts of international terrorism, and includes Iran, North Korea, Sudan, and Syria. Though it has yet to confirm the report, the White House does have strong support from Republicans on Capitol Hill to hit the renegade Maduro regime with one of its most powerful tools. In a letter penned by Florida Senator Marco Rubio and fellow GOP Senators John Cornyn of Texas and Colorado's Cory Gardner, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is urged to, quote, protect the American homeland and our people from the Venezuelan dictatorship's egregious support for terrorism and narco trafficking. Citing the ongoing nature of the discussion, White House officials refused to say whether or not the designation was a far-gone conclusion. But an NSC spokesman noted that the administration will consider scalable options to pressure the Maduro regime to restore democracy in Venezuela. Under Maduro, Venezuela has suffered hyperinflation, food shortages, and a devastating measles outbreak, which, because of emergency migration, has now spread into neighboring countries Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Critics question the wisdom of applying even more pressure on a regional powder keg.
Looks like just an expression of anger that will not achieve any of our goals and will make life worse for the average Venezuelan.
The State Department has apparently asked HHS, the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the CDC and USAID for input on that terror designation. Brett, the question being, can the U.S. hit Maduro without causing further hardships for the Venezuelan people? Brett?
Kevin Cork outside the Winter White House in Palm Beach. Kevin, thanks. The U.S. government is opposing the candidacy of a Russian general who could soon be in charge of an international police organization. The Trump administration is citing what it calls Russian abuses of Interpol. Senior foreign affairs correspondent Amy Kellogg looks at both sides tonight.
A Russian general and ally of President Vladimir Putin is expected to be the next president of Interpol, a development that's drawn the ire and concern of the U.S. Congress and Putin critics, including American-born investor Bill Browder, himself a target of Putin, who says the world should be wary of General Alexander Prokopchuk.
To put his representative in charge of the most important international crime-fighting organization is like putting the mafia in charge, and that will only lead to bad things going forward for crime-fighting and victims of the Putin regime.
Browder has faced several Interpol arrest warrants before, and just this week, the Kremlin accused Browder of killing his own attorney, who was helping him fight what Browder says was a bogus fraud case against him in Russia. In Washington, a group of senators accused Russia of using Interpol warrants to harass political opponents and compared electing Prokopchuk as Interpol's president to, quote, putting a fox in charge of a henhouse. Putin's spokesman turned the tables on that letter.
This is probably a certain kind of interference in the electoral process of an international organization. How else can we assess it?
There is another candidate in the running for president of Interpol, a South Korean named Kim Jong-yang. Tuesday afternoon, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo urged his election.
We encourage all nations and organizations that are part of Interpol and that respect the rule of law to choose a leader with credibility and integrity.
Interpol has been accused by international human rights organizations of weaponizing arrest warrants, and its last president was arrested in China on corruption charges. The election is tomorrow. Brett?
Amy, thank you. High expectations tonight in Massachusetts for the first stores selling legal recreational marijuana. We'll have a report when we come back. Today is the first day for legal recreational marijuana sales in Massachusetts, and that means big business for the state's 2 stores, which also happen to be the only ones on the East Coast. Correspondent Molly Line reports from one of them tonight in Leicester.
A wintry mix did nothing to dampen enthusiasm as buyers waited in long lines to legally purchase marijuana as 2 stores opened in Massachusetts.
3, 2, 1.
The state is the first east of the Mississippi to allow retail pot shops. 2 military veterans made the first buys, including Northampton's mayor.
We're bringing it out of the shadows. We're making it legal, regulated, safe, and available for adults to be able to purchase and consume responsibly.
An Iraq War veteran in Leicester made the initial buy there.
It's an honor. It's something amazing. Something I probably dreamed about it back in high school that this day would happen sometime.
Under the law, purchases are limited.
So people can buy up to an ounce of flour or 5 grams of concentrate, or a combination of both.
Residents voted to legalize recreational marijuana more than 2 years ago, but stringent oversight stalled progress.
I'm confident we've used our absolute best judgment to kick this off the right way, but we're going to observe and see, and if we need to make changes, we will.
The slow rollout aims to avoid the pitfalls other states have faced related to safety, supply, and crime post-legalization. But today, the greatest challenge facing police has been traffic control.
This is just like Black Friday at Walmart.
More than 1,000 people have streamed through the doors here at Cultivate in Leicester. And on this first day of legal sales, with the holiday season upon us, state officials warn that driving under the influence, including the influence of marijuana, will not be tolerated. Brett?
Molly Line in Leicester. Molly, thanks. Here's some advice you don't often hear. Do not eat salad. The Centers for Disease Control is advising U.S. consumers not to eat any romaine lettuce and restaurants to not serve any because of an outbreak of E. coli infections. 32 people have been affected in 11 states so far. NASA's latest visitor to Mars is just about there. The InSight probe arrives Monday after a 6-month, 300 million-mile journey. It's a 3-legged, 1-armed geologist, essentially, that will dig deep and listen for quakes. InSight will be the first American spacecraft to land since the Curiosity rover in 2012, and the first dedicated to exploring underground. President Trump has decided not to punish Saudi Arabia over the Jamal Khashoggi killing. We'll talk about that. Plus, the president has turned in his answers for the Mueller probe. The panel, an expanded panel, coming up on the day's top stories.
Your team is preparing written answers to questions about...
No, not my team. I'm preparing written answers. I'm the one that does the answer. Yes. Are they writing them out?
Yes.
Yeah. They're writing what I tell them to write.
Are they going to be submitted?
At some point very soon, yes.
Not today.
I don't know what the timing is, but I've finished them.
Okay.
I've completed them.
So you are submitting...
And it wasn't a big deal. By the way, it wasn't a big deal. The questions were asked and answered. It wasn't a big deal. You know, they make it like I had meetings for many, many hours. I got the questions. I responded. We wrote them out. I read them once. I read them a second time. We made some changes. That's it. They're very simple.
Well, now the homework assignment is done. President Trump turning in his questions to the special counsel Robert Mueller, ending this portion of the Q&A that was submitted to the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, issuing a statement. It's been our position from the outset that much of what has been asked raised serious constitutional issues and was beyond the scope of a legitimate inquiry. This remains our position today. The president has nonetheless provided unprecedented cooperation. Special counsel has been provided with more than 30 witnesses, 1.4 million pages of material, and now the president's written responses to questions. It is time to bring this inquiry to a conclusion. With that, let's start there with our panel. Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor at Real Clear Politics. John McCormick, senior writer at the Weekly Standard. And Bill Bennett, former education secretary and author of the book, The True St. Nicholas. Bill, let's start with you. Your thoughts on this. Homework's turned in.
Well, The True St. Nicholas, if you want to take a break from politics, it's a good read about somebody who's very much associated with Christmas who people don't know. Look, I hope it's almost over. I hope with Rudy Giuliani it's almost over. My guess is it is. And I think it's basically good news for Donald Trump. He got these inquiries. It was a take-home assignment, as it's been called. He answered the questions, sent them back. My guess is there's not a rebuttal or another response, so that's that. But we'll wait and see. We've all been wondering if there's anything there, and we'll soon find out.
Yeah, Byron, it seems like the clock is ticking.
Well, the thing we don't know is whether this is tying things up with a bow or opening up new areas of inquiry. I mean, Mueller could have follow-up questions. Some of the president's answers could raise issues that were not previously considered or that Mueller wants to go into. You know, Rudy Giuliani said in his statement that the White House had raised the issue of executive privilege over a lot of questions involving obstruction, all of which would, if it took place in the White House. So these questions apparently focused on what took place during the campaign. Was there any collusion? We know the president said 1 million times in public that there was no collusion. My guess is the answers are very similar to that. So the question is Mueller going to be satisfied by these questions and close up, or does it open up something new?
And AB, I guess the other question is, what does the Democratic House do if the Mueller report is not finished before the end of this year as they take control of the House of Representatives?
That is the most interesting question, Brett, because they want to tread carefully. There is a division in their party about how strenuously they should investigate the administration and sort of overlap with the Russia collusion probe, obstruction of justice investigation that Mueller has been tackling outside a special counsel. And, of course, this whole question of whether or not they would ever try to even begin a discussion of a potential impeachment without the findings of a special counsel report. I think, and I don't have Mueller sources because nobody does, that it's obvious that the special counsel is trying to squeeze Roger Stone, and because of the way that he's going after the associates around Roger Stone. I don't think that a Mueller report is coming soon. And like Byron, I think that it's possible that with the fact that the president has only responded to questions about the campaign and nothing about obstruction of justice or impeding the investigation or abuse of power, like the New York Times is reporting on today, that it doesn't mean that it's tied up with a bow. So it's going to be a challenge to the Democrats to not overreach, to trust in the special counsel, and to strike a balance here in what they choose to probe.
The other big story today, John, was the Jamal Khashoggi investigation, the statement put out by the White House, the president reacting to essentially saying, we've done what we're going to do with Saudi Arabia and we're going to move on. Take a listen.
We put out a statement on Saudi Arabia, which I guess most of you have seen. The CIA has looked at it. They've studied it a lot. They have nothing definitive. And the fact is, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It's all about America first. We're not going to give up hundreds of billions of dollars in orders and let Russia, China, and everybody else have them. I'm not going to destroy the world economy, and I'm not going to destroy the economy for our country by being foolish with Saudi Arabia. If we broke with them, I think your oil prices would go through the roof.
John, thoughts?
Well, I think on the specific question of whether we should cut off all arms sales to Saudi Arabia, obviously I think that is a foolish thing to do, and the president's right in that specific policy. What I don't think that he got right is this idea that you have to lie for foreign dictators. You have to help them cover up a murder, that you should cast doubt on our own intelligence, American intelligence, which reportedly has said with a high degree of confidence that Saudi Arabia, the leadership, Mohammed bin Salman, did order this. So I do think that obviously there are tough calls and strategic alliances with unsavory and even sometimes evil dictators, but you can also speak for American values. You can speak for human dignity, human rights. President Reagan did that very well. President Trump is either incapable or unwilling to do that. I thought this was a bit reminiscent of the North Korea statements where he said Kim Jong-un loves his people with great fervor and they love him back. This idea that you have to actively praise these brutal dictators is something that Trump believes is necessary to foreign policy.
Bill, this is getting, a lot of criticism. Senator Lindsey Graham, who's obviously an ally of the president, said, I firmly believe there will be strong bipartisan support for serious sanctions against Saudi Arabia, including appropriate members of the royal family, for this barbaric act which defied all civilized norms. While Saudi Arabia is a strategic ally, the behavior of the Crown Prince in multiple ways has shown disrespect for the relationship and made him, in my view, beyond toxic.
Well, part of the reason for the reaction is we know so much of the particulars, and the particulars have been presented over and over again. It's gruesome and deserves condemnation, this gruesome execution, torture and execution. But as a critic of Donald Trump, James Clapper said, we must maintain good relations with Saudi Arabia. It's very important. And by the way, we have had worse enemies than Saudi Arabia. We have one now called Iran. Churchill and Roosevelt also had allies that were much worse than Saudi Arabia.
Byron, do you think there'll be pushback on Capitol Hill?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Trump can be amazingly frank about his reasons for doing things. And he has clearly made a calculation that the relationship with Saudi Arabia is more valuable than inflicting any further punishment over the murder of Khashoggi. By the way, the United States has sanctioned 17 Saudis in relation to this, one of whom was fairly close to the Crown Prince. But Trump comes out and he says Saudi Arabia is a vital ally in the war on terror. They spent $400 billion with us, $110 billion in military spending. That's huge. That's in our interest. I'm not going to get any further worked up about this murder. And it's an astonishingly sort of frank, realist kind of statement. And I think even his supporters wish he could probably find more of a middle ground. I think John was kind of suggesting that, more of a middle ground to take more into account the human rights issues involved, at the same time still reaffirming the relationship between the U.S. and the Saudis.
Right. I think, AB, that his supporters say this is somebody speaking out without the filter, and that other presidents may not have said it publicly, but this is what they were probably thinking. The foreign minister from Iran tweeted out, Sharif, Mr. Trump bizarrely devotes his first paragraph of his shameful statement on Saudi atrocities to accuse Iran of every sort of malfeasance he can think of. Perhaps we're also responsible for the California fires because we didn't help rake the forests, just like the Finns do. So kind of getting in a jab there from Iran's perspective.
The message that this sends around the world to our allies and our adversaries is one of weakness and abandonment of our values. The president fails to affirm our commitment to the values that make us great. His statement said it was a statement of standing with Saudi Arabia. There was no balance. There was none of the values and commitments that you discuss your commitment to, and then you pivot to the importance of a relationship. It was basically, if they're going to give us money, we need them. And I'm competing for contracts with the Russians and the Chinese. And I think there's no better statement than from his ally, Rand Paul, who said, this is not America first, this is Saudi Arabia first. The condemnation has been swift and profound, and it's because the president is not acting in the best interest of this country when he solely makes this a business arrangement.
Well, let's end with this. There's a cultural shift happening. We covered it tonight. The Massachusetts legal marijuana. Bill, you had some thoughts about that before we leave.
Yeah, I think in Massachusetts, a lot of celebration, first sale of recreational marijuana. I will predict that they will come to regret this, as they are coming to regret this in Colorado. They will make a lot of money, but if you want to invest, you should probably invest in treatment centers, because you will see a huge explosion in that. You know, where everyone is worrying about this terrible opioid crisis, I'm reminded of C.S. Lewis, who said, when in a flood, don't grab for the hoses. We are making this problem worse. There are more people in drug treatment for marijuana than all other drugs combined. And if you want to know how people get into other serious drugs, it's through marijuana, not primarily through the misprescription, the overprescribing of drugs at CVS, but it's from marijuana. So be careful.
Panel, we covered the waterfront tonight. Thank you very much. When we come back, turkeys get a break again.